everyone, Elsie Denson here. Tonight we are going to prep our dinner. We're going to be making a braised beef in a balsamic cream sauce with homemade pappardelle pasta. So we're going to be doing the prep. We're going to make the homemade pasta so it can sit, and then we're going to start braising our beef so it can cook slowly. So for our pasta, we are going to use 1 cup of sourdough discard and 4 eggs and then 3 cups of flour. So I'm gonna give my sourdough discard a little bit of stir, and then we're gonna pour in 1 cup. And it doesn't have to be active. It can be just like right before you feed it. So we've got 1 cup of sourdough discard. Put it in here, and then I'm gonna put in 4 whole eggs. So we're not using just the yolks, we're using the whole egg. I was very lucky. I scored some eggs today at Publix when I was out there. There were only like a few dozen left. And of course, only the most expensive eggs were left. But I was happy to get 4, or I got 2 dozen, which won't last my family a whole week. But it's better than no eggs, especially since I wanted to make pasta for dinner tonight. Okay, so we've got our 4 egg yolks, or 4 eggs, and then I'm gonna pop each yolk, and then we're gonna give this a quick mix, and then we are going to knead it into our well of flour. So I'm doing this directly on the counter because that's just the easiest with pasta, because we're doing it. But we're prepping the dough for our pasta dough because we're gonna be making braised beef with pappardelle, homemade pappardelle pasta for dinner tonight. We'll also be baking off our sourdough breads that we made the other day. Okay. We're gonna start with 3 cups of flour. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my 3 cups of flour right here on my clean countertop. Let me take my spoon out. And this is just all-purpose flour. So 2 and 3. Put this right over here. And then I'm gonna make kind of a well. And we're gonna pour in our sourdough discard and our egg yolk mixture into the well. I'm gonna pour in a little bit at a time because it's gonna go everywhere. And we're gonna use the flour to incorporate it. I like to do this on the counter because that means we're not losing stuff to the side of a bowl. And it's gonna get messy. This is like the fun part about cooking if you're into like arts and crafts like I am. Okay, now we're gonna do the rest of it, and we're gonna just carefully fold our flour into it. It's like there's like this crane video where it's like a machine that was designed to scoop in its own like juices that keep it going. And it's like shows like the perpetuating, and I feel like that's what this is scooping all the egg yolk in to keep it going. And now we're going to knead up into a nice ball by pushing in. The trick with good pasta is to make sure you knead it thoroughly, which is why I'm starting the kneading process right now on the counter with my hands. And as I knead, the dough will come off my hands. So it's not as messy as you think it is. But yes, it starts out messy, but it makes for the best dough. And you wanna make sure you knead for a good amount of time, because otherwise you will get, if you've never made homemade pasta and your dough is stiff, and when you boil it up, it's because you didn't knead it enough. And the kneading helps break down the naturally occurring gluten in flour, which then gives you that nice tender elasticity. There we go.
Oh, you have a question? You mentioned sourdough discard. What is sourdough?
Sourdough discard. So if you get into making sourdough bread, you use a starter. So this is my, I'm not gonna touch, my hands are dirty, but this is my starter right here I put to the side. That is fermented water and flour. So essentially you keep it on your counter and you add equal parts water and flour to it every single day, and it naturally ferments. So it breaks down the like glucose in the flour, and it kind of creates like I want to say like a fermented flour mixture. That is what causes your bread to rise in sourdough, since it does not use any yeast or anything like that. So we make a lot of sourdough and we have a lot of discard because you got to keep it fed and active when you want to make a bread. So now we are just kneading our dough.
So to keep it active, you have to
feed it, yes. So when I feed it, essentially is I'll use discard recipes. So you get rid of like about half of it. And I use that half in the discard. Otherwise, you would get so much starter that you could create your own bakery, because you would be able to make hundreds of loaves of bread with it. So what you do is to feed, like you just take out half of it and then you use that discard in different recipes. So we are using it in our lovely pasta dough today. It will give it the good healthy prebiotics in it from the fermentation process, as well as just a lovely flavor. And see how it comes together quite nicely into a nice manageable ball. And the trick is you got to make your pasta and then you got to let it sit for an hour or two. So which is why we're making it now, and then we'll roll it out later to make our pappardelle. And I'm just gonna keep kneading it. There we go. And we're gonna let it sit, and then we'll do another knead session in a little bit. And I'm gonna let it sit right here. There's our beautiful thing. I'm gonna give my hands a little bit of a wash, and then we'll prep our braised beef. There we go. Almost done. Okay, now we're gonna prep our braised beef, and then we'll give a quick little knead and at the end with our dough, and then we'll store. Okay, I'm gonna put in a little bit of olive oil in my Dutch oven. This is a Dutch oven soup pot, but any Dutch oven will work. And we're gonna turn on the heat, and we're gonna let that start warming up over medium heat. And then I'm going to chop up one yellow onion. So I'm going to take off both ends of my yellow onion, and I'm going to cut through and take off this last outside, and we're going to dice up this onion and saute it for our braised beef. And we're going to be braising our beef in red wine and a little bit of balsamic vinegar, and then later we'll use the drippings for it to make a balsamic and red wine cream sauce to go with our pasta. It's kind of a copycat dish that I do. There's a restaurant in Nashville called Maggiano's, which has a very similar recipe, and this is kind of my take on it, and I absolutely love it. So I'm going to put my whole onion in here, and I just gave it kind of a loose dice, not a super small one. And then we're gonna add in some garlic, some minced garlic. You could use fresh garlic. I'm gonna add in about a tablespoon of garlic, so it'd be about 4 to 6 cloves of fresh garlic if you want to use that. And I'm gonna give this a nice little stir, and we're gonna let that saute up and caramelize. I'm gonna now prep our chuck roast. So I find, unless you can find short ribs, which are sometimes hard to find, and we have a big family, so to find enough short ribs at a store is a little challenging. I'm gonna use a chuck roast, which is a nice fatty cut of meat. You can see the marbling through. This is great for pot roasts or doing like a braised beef like this. And I'm gonna cut this up into kind of smaller chunks because we're gonna be braising it, and I just want to have tender chunks left over when it's ready to be served. So nothing huge, just some nice smaller pieces. This will also allow it to cook up faster than if you were to use the whole loaf. So, or the whole like roast as it is. So we're just kind of speeding up the process. Otherwise, if you wanted to start this a couple hours sooner, you could, and then you could simmer it longer, which would give you a little bit more of a, you know, a tender bowl flavor. But this is kind of the shortcut to speed it up, which is nice because today we were pretty busy. We had to drive to Murfreesboro, which is about an hour away from where we live, because my youngest daughter, she had some soccer games. And it was cold, but she played great. She was fierce on the field. But that takes a big chunk of our day. So anytime I can find a way to get a good home-cooked meal with a little bit of a shortcut is always a win. I always try to do a nicer, growing up we always had big Sunday dinners. So I always try to do a slightly fancier Sunday dinner every weekend that we're in town or we're able to. And my parents come over and eat with us, so we'll have 9 people eating with us tonight. There we go. And let's chop this guy. Almost done. And so you see, I'm just really making them in small little chunks, so maybe like 2 inches by 2 inches. But this will help them cook up and sear up fast as well. Okay. There we go. We've got our oil. I'm gonna give my hands just a quick wash.
You have a question. Why are you having people over for dinner?
Oh, it's my parents. They just come over.
You said 9. So.
Oh, 9 people. Oh, yes. So I have 5 kids. So my straight up immediate family, there's 7 of us. So we're always a crowd. And then my parents are coming over. I guess I did miss that out. So 9 might seem like a lot to you guys, but that's just my parents. So not a huge one. I have 5 kids. My oldest daughter, she turns 15 tomorrow. And then I have a 13-year-old son, a 9-year-old daughter, and then a 3.5-year-old, almost 4, and a 1.5-year-old. So we've got a big family. So every time I cook, I'm always feeding a crowd. Especially with, I feel like my teenagers, they eat so much. Especially like my 13-year-old son. He's I think he's probably at 5'11". So he's really tall. And he eats so much. Okay, we've got our onions and our garlic caramelizing in our oil. Now we're going to add in some seasoning so that they can start getting nice and fragrant. And then we'll saute our meat up, and then we'll add our liquids for our braised beef. And then we'll do our pasta one more knead before we put it in the fridge to chill. So here is some fresh rosemary. I'm just like, I would say, de-leafing it. So you just have the individual leaves. And we're gonna throw that in there. It's an easy way to kind of get our herbs off. And this is rosemary, fresh rosemary. And it's gonna give a nice, fragrant, and aromatic flavor to our sauce.
I think that's what grows crazy in the
Oh, you know, it could be. So rosemary is a perennial. So if you do plant it, it will come back. It's a bush. A lot of times at Christmas or in the winter, you can get a rosemary tree from the grocery store, and then you can just keep harvesting rosemary off of it. Except I can't keep anything alive. I think I buy them, and then I'm like, ooh, this will be perfect, and then it dies because I am really terrible about watering. So I put 2 little sprigs of rosemary in it, and this is for about 6 pounds of chuck roast. And we're letting that come out into the oil. And it's got such a lovely, fragrant smell.
Yeah, Kelly, we have a herb garden, and I'm pretty sure it's the rosemary that goes rampant, and I have to like cut it back. It'll get like 4 feet tall. Yes,
it does it grows the thing. Now we're gonna add in some oregano. So I'm gonna add certain things, and again, I'm just gonna do my little pulling off on the leaves. I don't want the big stalk in there, simply because then I don't have to fish out the stalk later because, oh, Bruni and Loki, we don't need to bark at every car. Bruni, Logie. Our dogs love to sit on our little banquette seating and look out the window and let us know that everybody's attacking. So we've got 2 little sprigs of oregano in here. Bruni, come here. We don't need to bark. And then we're gonna use some thyme. I do love thyme as well. And we're gonna get, I saw them in a smaller container and then I was like, ooh, a plant. They're just starting now to add out some of the fresh herbs for, spring's coming, I guess. Here was, it's supposed to get up to 60 this week here in Tennessee, so I'm kind of looking forward to that over the cold. Taking off some of the leaves on these. We're gonna let them kind of get nice aromatic oil that we can saute our beef chunks in. There we go. And this is just, it's gonna simmer and it's just gonna give our meat a great flavor, as well as we're gonna be using the drippings of this to make our sauce. We get some tongs. Okay. So I'm just gonna put my beef in here and we're gonna start sauteing it up and kind of brown it on each side. So I'm gonna try to put in as much on a layer. I might have to do it in 2 batches, but hopefully. I was thinking about having an even huger Le Creuset pot, and I was gonna think about getting it out for this one just because it's nice to have a lot of surface area, but I didn't want to have to clean it. It's so big and hard to clean. So I'm just gonna layer and do 1 layer here, and we're gonna sear it off and then flip it, and then we'll sear off our other ones. While these are sitting nicely, I'm going to put some salt and pepper on the top to give them a nice seasoned as well. They're browning. Let's see, I had to finally remembered at the grocery store to buy some more ground black pepper. So I'm gonna be adding about half a teaspoon of black pepper over this thing, so then I'll add about another half over the other one. So we've got that, and then I grab my salt over here. And we're gonna do a nice sprinkle over. The black pepper got right up in my nose. Okay, we're gonna let those sear, and I guess while these are sitting on here, I'm gonna pepper and salt them as well. A lot of times I just salt them in the bowl like that, because then sometimes your extra seasoning gets on your cutting board and then you lose that flavor. And a little bit of salt. And right now we're just browning each side of our meat. And this is just gonna give it a nice texture. I'm gonna flip some of them over in there, and it will just help give another kind of flavor profile before we add in our liquids to sear, or to braise them in, which is essentially cooking with liquid over like a low temperature for a long time. And put this guy around. There we go. And I think we've got those all flipped off. Beautiful. Okay. We're also going to be using red wine, and I'm going to open up some tomato paste. Here. Get our tomato paste open. And this, all of them will kind of work together to just make this really good kind of thick sauce, and then we'll add some cream to it, so it will be just delicious. And balsamic. We're going to use a little bit of balsamic vinegar. The acidity of the vinegar helps break down the fat in the meat and makes it just a really juicy, tender meat. And then the slow cooking on top of that as well. Okay. Beautiful. Okay. Now I'm going to stack Some of this meat over to one side, and we're gonna add in a few more chunks. And then we'll stack that meat off. That way I don't have to take out. And then the meat, as we sear it off, just the natural fat coming out of the meat will add also a really robust flavor to the sauce as well. There we go. It smells so aromatic and fresh. While these are browning, let's do a couple more kneads on our dough. I find that you want to over knead what you think is necessary for your dough, because it's the stretching and pulling that leads to the most tender pasta. Because it helps break down like the glucose chains in it, and it just makes it so good. So they actually say there's something like you should knead your pasta dough for 15 minutes. I don't do it quite as much as that, but if you do it in a hand mixer, you could do it on there. I do find that hand kneading works a little bit better than your stand mixer with the dough hook, simply because the dough hook kind of catches it and it will go like this around, and it doesn't give the true knead, which is the stretching and the breaking that you're kind of doing as you push into the countertop. And so I'm just like pushing down with my heel or my palm of my hand, and then kind of like pulling up. There we go. And also you want to make sure you let your pasta dough sit for at least an hour or so. That allows the flour to completely hydrate in the like mixture with the eggs and the sourdough discard. So there we go. Even. Perfect. So you see how it's just made, it's got such a nice, tender, perfect dough. Especially when it starts out so messy. Let's give these guys a quick flip.
You have a question? Can you knead it too much?
No, you really can't knead it too much. With pasta dough, there's no such thing as kneading it too much.
With some things, yes?
Yes, if you over knead a bread like a sourdough, you can kind of mess with the proofing process. So like I kind of do a gentle stretch and knead with that. Okay. We're getting that until all of our little meat is kind of seared off. And then this searing it, browning it, is just going to give a lovely kind of texture to our meat and also help bring out some of those nice flavors for our sauce. Okay, now we are going to add in about 2 cups of red wine. And I feel like I have about 2 cups left in this bottle, so we're going to use the rest of this. I'm going to put it right over that. And then I get a spoon so I can get my tomato paste out. And then we are going to put in 2 big scoops of tomato paste. So it's going to be, I would say maybe like 1/3 of a cup. Tomato paste, if you haven't actually worked with it in cooking, punches a lot of flavor for a small amount. It's, essentially tomatoes that have been cooked down into like a reduction. And this will be perfect for our braised beef and our homemade pasta. It's gonna add a nice richness and acidity to our braised beef, like the cream sauce that we're gonna make with it and all the meat droppings later. I'm gonna stir that up until it's nice and mixed. There we go. And then I'm going to add in just a splash of, well, I guess it'll probably be like a tablespoon or so of balsamic vinegar. This is the acidity in the vinegar is gonna help make the meat extra tender, and it's gonna give a lovely flavor to our sauce, our balsamic cream sauce.
You have a question. Is there a replacement for the wine?
For the wine, I guess if you're trying to do like an alcohol-free, you could just use some beef broth and then maybe double your balsamic vinegar to kind of get that flavor. If your goal is to be completely like alcohol-free, you could use brandy or a different thing outside of red wine if you were planning to do, if you just didn't have red wine, or a burgundy, which I guess is a red wine. But yeah, I guess I would just replace it with beef broth and add a little bit, like double your balsamic or maybe even triple it to kind of give you that nice flavor. Although when you are cooking this, so for those who are using you do cook off all of the alcohol. So this red wine in our for our braised beef and balsamic cream sauce for our pasta dinner tonight will cook off. So there won't be any alcohol in it, but the flavors will be there. Okay, we have that in there, and then now we are going to add in about 2 cups of, it can be beef broth. I'm going to be using 2 cups of water and a nice scoop of beef bouillon. So let me grab a thing and we'll do that. So I'm going to put my scoop in. I'm going to turn mine down to low because we're going to let it simmer. You want just kind of enough to just barely cover the meat. So I'm going to put my nice big scoop of beef bouillon in here. This is going to give it the flavor of the beef broth. And then I'm going to slowly pour that water over my spoon. And we're going to let it simmer in this sauce. There we go. And I'm going to use my tongs to kind of scrape out the beef bouillon. I love using this better than beef bouillon over beef broth. I feel like it has just a bit more flavor. Bone broth works well too. That has more flavor than just regular beef broth. Okay. Now we have it, and you see how our meat is in kind of not completely submerged, but fairly close being in our lovely broth. Now we're just going to kind of simmer on a medium low with the lid on for about an hour and a half or so, and that's going to help the meat get nice and tender and speed it up. You could also do this for longer if you wanted to. I think you could do it up to like 3 or 4 hours and it would just get more robust and flavorful. But we want to eat dinner at a decent time tonight. And then I'm going to give one last knead to our pasta dough, and then I'll pop it in the fridge to chill, and our prep will be done until later when we are putting everything together for the final show. Well, guys, thank you for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and don't forget to join us back in about an hour when we finish up the rest of dinner. We'll be making the cream sauce with it, adding that. We'll also be cooking up some asparagus and then cooking our sourdough breads that we made the other day. Thanks again for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and don't forget to come back.